I wanted to make that decision earlier on in my life as a young adult. My goal was to be a pensioner and go to the beach every morning before getting on with my day. I believe I have achieved that. I'm not a pensioner yet. I'm not retired by any means, but that was a lifetime goal for me. When I went to Milos and I saw the elderly, the locals, I can tell that they were not tourists, they were locals, and they were going to the beach. And I said, like, that is such a badass life, man. You know, to be able to go to the beach in the morning and then go to like Agora farmers market. I mean, what else do you want? It's a great question, and it's a great comment. I think this whole channel is about that, about how I relocated from the UK here to Greece and the reasons why. And yes, our environment plays a big role in mental health and how we feel about it. In fact, there is no sun right now, so I'm recording this video, and even that, I was using that as an excuse or not to actually record this video because I need the sun. I grew up in Venezuela, and even though I was born in the UK and I lived in the UK for many years, and that's where I met my Greek wife, I am from Venezuela, and I grew up by the beach, by the sea. I grew up in a tropical weather country. I am ruled by the sun, and here the sun is coming out. Perfect cue for this type of videos, I guess. But yeah, if I will have stayed in London, my motivations will be probably, I don't know, maybe different or the same. Who knows? I guess I will never know. But one thing is for sure, that when I was living in London, I had the same excitement about being in London, because as someone who was born in London but grew up in Venezuela, I always had this idea of going back to the place of my birth. So for me, being in London had a very special meaning, had a very special, had a purpose. It was a very special place for me, and it still is a special place for me because that's where I was born. My parents happened to be living in London at the time, and they got married in London, and I was born in London. I just happened to be raised in a different country, and both my parents are from Venezuela anyway, so I'm full-on Venezuelan, really. Calimera, good morning. So my heritage is Latino. And if I go even back, if I rewind even more, my roots from my grandfather, the father of my mom, they come from this side of the world. It's just insane how life works, how we are all coming from different places, and at the end we all live in the same planet, right? So from my mom's side, my granddad, they were coming from Beirut, Lebanon. And I still have memories of my granddad having celebrations in Venezuela. Whenever there will be Father's Day, for example, my grandma will cook for him typical Lebanese dishes, believe it or not. So I will always make fun of myself, or I will always share this with my grandmother, saying like how funny it is that, you know, we have in our bloodline, we have people that left Beirut, okay, on a boat, man. This is like more than 100 years ago, of course, to go to Venezuela, right? And here I am, a few generations later, for crazy reasons of life or just by pure randomness, I'm living in Greece, which is very, very close to Beirut, to Lebanon. My granddad did not speak the language, but it's funny how life works, right? Like, you know, and I'm pretty much diverting this video a little bit because this video was about London, but you have to understand that when I was living in London, I was very excited. I was ecstatic for many, many years, but the weather did play a big role, okay? So forgive me if this video is a little bit all over the place, but I just want to give a little bit of context because it's not like I'm a English person that was born and raised in London and then finally escaped the doom and gloom or the bad weather or the rat race. I embraced the rat race. I embraced the weather. And in fact, when I moved to the UK, I said to myself, I know the weather is bad. I know it's going to be raining forever. And that's not going to affect me. I was determined. I am a very determined person. I am very self-motivated and disciplined. But with the weather, yeah, after a few years, it really got to me. It really got to me. And I realized that it was getting to me when I will come to Greece for holidays, of course. And when I came to Greece the very first time, and I arrived in Athens, and I was going to Elefsina, that's where my wife is from. And we arrived at night, and even at night, while we were going from the airport to Elefsina, I felt like I was in Venezuela. I just felt it in the air, whatever I can see in the taxi, just going to Elefsina, it just made me feel somehow like I was in Venezuela. And it has nothing to do with the architecture or anything like that. There's a feeling attached to it. And when I got to Elefsina, I felt pretty at home. So, you know, there is just a feeling. I believe there are studies about this, not only of how the weather affects our mental health and our well-being. I believe that everybody knows that, yes, we need to take some natural sunlight every day. Of course, this is my therapy. This helps me. But, you know, when I was living in the UK and I came to Greece for the very first time, it made me realize that I am being affected by the weather. When I went to Milos on that same trip, my life changed completely, really, because I said to my wife, like, I want to be like one of those people growing old, you know, going to the beach early in the morning. I've shared this many times before here on the channel. In fact, I fell in love with Milos so much that when we got married, we went again to Milos for our honeymoon. Because I just love that island. It's so romantic. It's such a beautiful place. So the environment plays a big role in how I feel, mental health. It does play a big role in my well-being. You can see it by the videos that I make every morning. This means everything to me. This is my rich life. Yeah, this is priceless, you know. But in London, I was really happy. I cannot say, as much as I want to portray that I escaped this horrible place or that I escaped this horrible life that I had in England, in London, is really not true. You know, my daughter was born in London, so there's a special, you know, place for that, you know. So I was born in London. My eldest daughter was born in London as well. London is where I met my wife, you know. It's a big part of my life. It's a very important chapter in my life. I still have friends in London. And, you know, for me to go to the place where I was born as an adult in my early 20s and see the place where I was born, right? Like oh, I was born here. This is the house where I was growing up as a baby before we went back to Venezuela. It had a very special meaning to me. There's something about being born in one place and growing up in another one and finally going back home, you know, to a certain extent. Even London was not my home when I was a kid, and I did not grow up in the system and the school system of the British system. It was always in my mind as I was growing up, you know, what is London like? Because I don't have any memories as a kid. I was a baby when I went to Venezuela. So when I arrived in London, I was just, you know, in my early 20s, it was just Godsmack, really. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. Not only is London, right? But at the same time, it's a place where I was born. And then, I rebuilt my life from scratch. And the same goes when I went from Venezuela to London. And I've told this story many times before. When I left Venezuela to London, I had a life in Venezuela, My early 20s, I had a job, I had friends, I had a girlfriend, I had things going on for myself. And I could have stayed. So the same has been true when I went to London. We could have stayed, but after the birth of my daughter, Fedra, we decided that we wanted something different. And I was the one responsible for that decision. By the way, I have mentioned this many, many times before. My wife is Greek, and she went to London to study. Well, she went to England to study, and then she moved to London in order to get a life, I guess, and a job, as most people do. But after living in London for many, many years, and then we got married here in Greece, and then went back to London again, and then after the birth of my daughter, Fedra, I told my wife, like, listen, I want my daughter to grow up in a culture like mine. And for me, the Greek culture is much closer to my heritage than the British one. No disrespect to my British brothers. But yeah, it's a different culture. And it's a different vibes altogether. As you can see, I'm going for my walk a little bit earlier. There's plenty of people here. Kalimera σας.
Kalimera.
I could have made this video 1 minute long and just say yes, the environment has played a big role in my mental health, or it does play a big role in our mental health, in our environment. But I think you already know that answer. I think you already know that take. I was happy in London, very happy. It was hard. It was hard for me to take that decision and to convince my wife. Because my wife, like many Greeks, when they travel and they go abroad, most of them don't want to come back, especially after finding a job or getting a life. And, for me, as a Venezuelan that left Venezuela many years ago, I've been away for so long. The Greece now is my home. But I understand that sentiment, that feeling of like, we'll never go back. But today, I realize that wherever I go, I will still carry myself. And it's all about what we want to experience in life. And everything has a sacrifice. Wherever we go, wherever I have lived, I realize that it's the same struggles. And we all want to be happy. We all need shelter. We all want love. We all want to belong somewhere. We all want to do the things that we want to do with our lives. But after I became a parent, and my daughter was born, obviously life is very expensive in London. And we were at a crossroad, and, I said, beyond all of that, beyond the opportunities in all of this, I'm talking about the cultural aspect of it. Right, I'm talking about, and when I say the cultural aspect of it, I'm talking about the family unit. I'm not saying that there is no family unit in the UK, okay? Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the vibes. Right? When I came to Greece and I was just talking to Greeks, well, back then I did not speak Greek, but whenever I was here, I felt at home. I said, I want my kids to experience that. I want my kids to be Greek. Right? But they are not only Greek, they're Greek/Venezuelan. Well, my daughter as well, that was born in the UK, she has, it's kind of like a similar story, right? Like because she was born in the UK, she's British, but she's Greek, because she's a Greek kid, right? But she has, Latino blood in her vein. I always tell her that, don't forget that. She says, like, I'm British. I'm like, well, Fedra, you're not British. I mean, you're like me, right? Like, we were born in a certain place. And yes, in paper, we do have something that says that we're British. But in your blood, it's all Latino blood. and that's nothing to be ashamed of. And I don't know why I'm making this video longer than it has to be, but yeah, the environment played a big role. But again, the main message of this video is that unfortunately I cannot use the typical video of someone who escaped the 9 to 5 or the grind, calimera, say, or they had a horrible life in London and finally came to paradise. I had a good life with my wife. It was a tough decision to make, and for a year or two I was questioning if that was the right decision for me and my wife, and at the time my baby, my newborn baby. It was a tough years, man. The first year and a half here in Greece, it was probably the most challenging ones of my life. Yeah, because of massive change, going from living with my wife on our own, that we had a life for many years, to moving to Greece and have my in-laws around and have that thing that I craved so much for me and for my kids and for my family, meaning that family unit. It's a real shock. Okay, so be careful what you wish for. But by the way, I love my in-laws. They're like, you know, they know me forever. I know them for a long time now, and they know I love them, and they love me too. So, but it was hard, man. It was very hard, and that environment change of being in London by myself with my wife and having that independence, and now all of a sudden being here in Greece with my in-laws and everybody in our case. And I was not living in this beautiful place, by the way. I mean, Elefsina is Elefsina. There's a special place in my heart in Elefsina because I lived there for 10 years before moving here. But nevertheless, was a massive shock from London to Elefsina. And some people get pissed off when I compare the environments like London to Elefsina, but that's my experience. I'm not comparing the cities. I'm comparing my life, my human experience of someone who was one day in London and the next day I'm in Elefsina, which is, you know, you can't compare it, but that was my reality, right? So this is not your typical YouTube channel of comparing where should you move, Athens or London. This is a channel about my experience as someone who was living in a particular place and now is living here. And when I compare, for example, Nafrio with London, it's because I'm comparing not the actual town or the city. I'm comparing my reality, my life. Not in terms of the size, not in terms of what the city is about. Anyways, this video is longer than it had to be. But yeah, the environment plays a big role. I'm all up for mental health. I'm all up for choosing wisely. I wanted to make that decision earlier on in my life as a young adult. My goal was to be a pensioner and go to the beach every morning before getting on with my day. I believe I have achieved that. I'm not a pensioner yet. I'm not retired by any means, but that was a lifetime goal for me. When I went to Milos and I saw the elderly, the locals, I can tell that they were not tourists, they were locals, and they were going to the beach. And I said, like, that is such a badass life, man. You know, to be able to go to the beach in the morning and then go to like Agora, farmer's market. I mean, what else do you want, right? So I have achieved that goal. Now I'm working on some bigger goals, believe it or not. But this is my home. I am ruled by the sun. Thank you so much for the love and support. I better go home and stop talking. I have work to do. I hope this video finds you well. See you later.